Hello friends, I am Smruti and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today's video will be very special for you because I am going to discuss the very special and important chapter of the history of English literature. And in the entire domain of the history of English literature, it bears an eloquent testimony to the fact that from the Middle Age to the present age, there is a transitional change, and this change has been dynamic and that has been occurred by phase, and it has made a considerable change by extending the range and the bulk of the English literature to influence the whole society, people, and administration. That's why from the beginning we are going to discuss not about the Celtic invasion or the Jude, the Anglo-Saxon period, but first of all we are going to discuss about the Geoffrey Chaucer, the father of Indian English, the father of history of English literature, who had also influenced Indian English literature in the sense that the Indian English literature influenced by the English literature of England is in the some extent or to a some portion has been bilingual as well as it has influenced it the latter so much so that the moral ethical as well as the poetic elements or the novels in the poetic form has been transmitted from English to Indian literature. That's why the English literature and Indian writing in English has been mingled with each other and one another. That's why it may have a specific impact towards society. So let us go and we shall discuss about the Geoffrey Chaucer. In the entire domain of English literature, from the Anglo-Saxon age to the Middle Age, where the hundreds, 1066, what we call the um, invasion, where the William, the Duke of Normandy, started the invasion for the purpose of dealing with the entire land, the continent, the subcontinent. That's why he may grasp the power overall the country as well as the continent and subcontinent. What we call the same invasion that has occurred and it took place very again and again to procure a political power and annex the entire political field, and the continent come under it, what we call also the Norman conquest. So since then afterwards we have come and begin towards a new phase of English literature, what we call the age of Geoffrey Chaucer or the age of Chaucer. Chaucer is literally known as the father of English literature, and he has contributed a lot towards enlarging the bulk of English literature. What I have been describing, and I am going to describe also. First of all, we have to look towards the Chaucer, the father of English literature, who has contributed a lot. First of all, I am going to introduce about the Chaucer and his lifestyle and especially what he had done. So let us start the topic. What especially Chaucer influenced on the literature and his entire era of literature. First of all, we have to make a serious story about Geoffrey Chaucer, because Geoffrey Chaucer was the only one person who had who had given shape to the English literature its entire domain, and that's why it can be said in the context that he had a seeing eye, retentive memory, and ability to express and capacity for judgment. That's why he was called the father of English literature. From the beginning, we are going to start about Chaucer, the father of English literature. Especially, Chaucer was born in London in 1340, 25th, and he had died on 25th October 1400. But in the fact, with respect to his date of birth and with respect to the year of his birth, it can be said that he was also born in 1350, because some writers of English literature argue that Geoffrey Chaucer was born in 1350. That's why there is a considerable controversy over the date birth of year of Geoffrey Chaucer. That's why we should have to make a clear and make a clarity about his this conception about the birth of Chaucer, and we have to understand and remember most of the general points Geoffrey Chaucer was known as the father of English literature, and he is considered the greatest English poet of the Middle Ages, and was the first to be buried in what would become the Poets' Corner in the Westminster Abbey. His best work his best work was the Canterbury Tales, what we are all familiar with, and his best known work, the Canterbury Tales, legitimized the literary use of the Middle English. You have to understand those things because it will be very important for the examination. So far as our study is concerned, we should make a very clear amendation and introduction towards the Geoffrey Chaucer, because before the age of Chaucer there is a transitional period. There has been changes of period, and there have occurred a number of phenomenal incidents to impact the whole literary age. That's why we have made the age of Chaucer a very significant one, because it has given direction to the English literature by being influenced to the plagiarism. The means that means or the plagiarism means or the plagiarist means the person who derived his source from ancient sources, especially from any other sources, because through that sources he write his poetry, drama, fiction, or entire domain of literature with which he is familiar. That's why Geoffrey Chaucer's period has been divided into three kinds. One is what we call Italian, another is French, uh, another is English period. English period of those three is the main period of his life and of his literary career. Of his Italian period, he was influenced by uh, Guillaume de la Loris, with which he was introduced to the philosophy of the life, philosophy of various kinds, and the Boethius, one of the most Italian philosopher, and his work, the law philosophy, influenced him a lot. That's why his philosophical ideas have been developed in that manner, and uh, in his many Italian poets he has studied and their work and literature. That's why he had given emphasis on enlarging the book as far as possible, and the number of incidents can be mingle in that sense. Another thing is that he was influenced by the three great poets of Italy, from whom the war Renaissance started, and it in the due course of time spread through the nook and corner of the world. It especially metamorphosed the very condition and the stagnant social condition of England by influencing directly its literary particles and vibrating those particles to spread through the nook and corner of England. And the main saying is that Geoffrey Chaucer is the man of excellence, man of excellence, and the excellent caliber as well as the genius, and whose genius far exceeds those qualities which are beyond our imagination in present time, and especially those things like the things of a passion, things of a fear, things of a catharsis or purgestion, those are developed later in Elizabethan age. They had also its beginning of the trash of beginning in Geoffrey Chaucer says, and I want to say that Boccaccio, Dante, etc., like the uh, Italian poets, they were the main persons with whom or with the company of whom Geoffrey Chaucer made a great deal, and that's why he became the great English poet of that generation. Let us proceed towards our summary and what kind of things we'll discuss. First of all, we will discuss the Chaucer's life and work. Um, uh, then we'll discuss about his Canterbury Tales, and then the choice of the pilgrimage, the general prologue, and the wife of the bath, and the conclusion and the legacy. This is the last or the final point of our discussion. But we cannot elaborate or discuss it, because our discussion should be in the way that it should be proceeded towards giving us a new insight and new outlook towards society. That's why we may be able to grasp the very concept related to the age of Geoffrey Chaucer, and those relationship with the age of Geoffrey Chaucer will help us a lot in understanding the socio-political, economic, and moral and ethical condition of the England during the age of Chaucer. because each and every age is influenced by a socio-political and economic condition, and if they are ordered or in a manner which are quite equivalent as well as inimical to the congruence of the age, then we can say that the age is almost perfect and accommodative and adaptive to each and every kind of persons, those who are adhering to that age or those who are directly clinging to that age. So let us proceed towards the next chapter, the life, Geoffrey Chaucer's life and work. And from the beginning or from the dawn of this nature, I have described that Geoffrey Chaucer was the English poet and the first of the English poet who was known as the father of English poetry, and he was also known as the morning star of Reformation, whereas John Wycliffe is known as the morning star of Renaissance. And Geoffrey Chaucer's work have a great impact on the political and social life of the people of the England. That's why he made a great contribution towards society, literature, and human life in one. Geoffrey Chaucer. He was most born like his parents' house in the London. First of all, Geoffrey Chaucer was born most like at his parents' house in the London. He was affluent middle class family who made their money in the London wine trade. He was affluent middle class family who made their money in London wine trade. He received an excellent education, became competent in Middle French and Middle English as a Latin, found employment in the house of John Gaunt, the son of King Edward the King. So we knew the very little information about the Geoffrey Chaucer and how he had developed. He was from the very affluent family. That means Geoffrey Chaucer was from very luxurious family. He had no lack of money. He was affluent with the money, and he belonged to a middle class family who made their money in the London white trade, and they earned their livelihood through the London white trade. He received an excellent education, became competent in French and Middle English as well as Latin, and found employment in the house of John Gaunt, the son of King Edward III of the England. This is the first phase of his life, and then this is the first phase of his family life that I am going to describe or elaborate. And the second thing is we are going to discuss about the 1360s. He joined the royal service. He first started as his career by joining in the royal service, traveling throughout France, Spain, and Italy. So by traveling, or from the point of traveling that has been hinted in this video, we can know clearly that his period have been divided into three types. One is French, another is Italian, and another is English. In his French period is not so important because his French period is filled up with the philosophical ideology and the tussle with this philosophical ideology, because he want to derive or extract a peculiar ideology of philosophy. That's why he may rule or he may claim a particular goal of life that may be adaptive and applicable towards society. And another thing is the Italy. In Italy he met several persons, several poets, Dante, Boccaccio, and Petrarch, and Petrarchan sonnets which were dealt with the passions of the life, the sorrowful moments of the life, and it gave direction to the life and literature in a very rueful way, and from which Geoffrey Chaucer derived a very thing what I call the tragic pathetic elements of the life, and he filled them with morality. That's why his works have been so brilliant and so excellent through the nook and corner of the world, that many more praise or the commendable words will be less if we do it more and more. In 1366, he married Philippa de Roet, the Geoffrey Chaucer's wife. Philippa de Roet, he was the lady in waiting of the queen. The marriage helped further his interest in the English court. Oh, this is the very political thing, I think, because he was the lady whom Japanese Chaucer married or got married. He was a lady in waiting of the queen, and the marriage helped the Chaucer most in his career in the English court, because he wanted to perpetuate his career, and he wanted to carry on or carry out his career, because through his career he wanted to develop the English literature. He was to develop the English drama in the poetic form. That's why he was called the grandfather of the English drama. though his works were often in most in the poetic manner, his works show that they can be also called drama in the poetic form. That's why he was called, or Geoffrey Chaucer was called, the father of English drama. Geoffrey Chaucer. He published his first important poem, The Book of the Duchess, an elegy for the death of John of Gaunt's wife, in which he used a dream vision. First of all, the first book of Geoffrey Chaucer, what he first published was The Book of the Duchess. Was the Book of the Duchess, an elegy for the death of the John Gaunt's wife, in whom he used the first dream vision. I want to say that elegy means a very sad song. Elegy can be written in favor of those persons, those who are widow or the widowed, because the persons who have lost their wife or husband, that whether they may be uh, male or the female. Though I think Chaucer was a court poet, Chaucer was in direct relationship with the court. So I think that Chaucer has been painted those things in a very simple manner, and those things are very beautiful things. That's why he has been described them beautifully. Next point, we have to state that in 1370 he was at the various time on diplomatic mission in Flanders, France, and Italy. Next point we have to discuss that in 1370 he was at the various times on the diplomatic mission in Flanders, France, and Italy. Along the way, he also spent time familiarizing himself with the work of Italian poets Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio, and this would be have profound influence upon his writing. And this is the major part of his career, because by traveling through the Italy, through the nook and corner of Italy, he made those three important persons. They are Dante, Boccaccio, and Petrarch. And I have to underline those three great poets of Italy, that they are Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio. Dante's Allegri, Petrarch tradition, Boccaccio's writing of poetry influenced him so much so that he derived many sources from their poetry, and he made English poetry in the same manner as he was thought and taught to write the poem in the manner of Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio style. So he was called a plagiarism, or that was called a plagiarism, and the person who involved in it, mostly the Geoffrey Chaucer, was called the plagiarist. And the second book of the Chaucer is the House of the Fame. House of the Fame was the second book of Geoffrey Chaucer, a poem more than 2000 lines, also in a dream vision form. That means the House of Fame is a allegorical work. In the dream vision form refers to the allegorical work of Geoffrey Chaucer. That's why it was the second most famous and important book of Geoffrey Chaucer's in the list of literary chronology. Then we have to discuss another point about Geoffrey Chaucer. In the same year, he published the Parliament of Fools. In the same year, he published the Parliament of Fools, in which he published what? The Book of the Fame. At that time, he also published the Parliament of the Fools, an indictment of court law, states and an allegory with the births corresponding to social classes and marriages of convents as a theme. His poem Prolix and Cresside, the Chaucer's retold and the medieval romance of a doomed lover, setting his epic poem against the backdrop of a siege of the Troy. The poem takes its story from the Giovanni Boccaccio's the Philostratus inspiration from the Dante's love for Beatrice and Petrarch's love for Laura. His wife died in this period, and it is the most tragic some period of Geoffrey Chaucer's life, because his wife died in this period, 1387. His wife died, and the period which followed was an unfavorable one for him, both politically and financially. So after the death of his wife, after the ultimate decrease of his wife, he had to encounter with the both financial and the political traumas, or any kind of dilemmas or the crisis. That's why in that phase the literary period was doomed to some certain extent. Then he would rise again, he rose again to confound and to influence his literature in a very great manner. This is how we should discuss in the latter page. The same year began as the Canterbury Tales. Oh, this is the most important poem. And Canterbury Tales, the age and its beginning, has very remarkable impact on society. And in that year also, as a dual nature of his life, as a dual way of his life, in one side his wife has been dead, on another side he had begun his Canterbury Tales, and those two things has impacted his life a lot, I think so. In 1389, 1391, he was appointed the clerk of the King of Horks. He was robbed several times and once beaten. You have to remember those points. 1399, after a long period of hardship, pension he had been living on was reinstated, and he took the lease on the house in the garden of the Westminster Abbey. In 14,000, this is the end of his life. This is the end era of his life because he died in the same year. He died unknown causes on 25th October in London. But most of the writers argue that Geoffrey Chaucer was born of Geoffrey Chaucer was born uh, in the year due to the prediction of some of the saints, because he will be the great predictor. The Chaucer will be the great predictor of society in his literary literature, and the year he died, it was also anticipated that he would die from heart attack. I think he was buried in the Westminster Abbey. That's why the Westminster Abbey, where he was buried, was called the Poor's Corner. You have to remember those things because those things are very important in examination. Then the Canterbury Tales. We have to deal with the Canterbury Tales. We have to discuss about the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales, you have seen the picture, the very beautiful picture of the Canterbury Tales written by Geoffrey Chaucer, and it is the old style of writing that I am going to make a circle. The Canterbury Tales is a long narrative poem in the told in verse. Canterbury Tales is a very long and narrative poem, and those were written in the format of the verse, written in the Middle English and structured in the three parts. What are the structures? First is comes the general prologue. General prologue, which introduces the character and setting of the work. The prologues to single tales as well as the epilogues in the same case. The 24 tales themselves. It gives insight into individual characters as regards their lifestyle, psychology, and experience. The Canterbury Tales gives insight into individual characters. That means individual characters have been represented, embodied in different way and perspective, and their lifestyle and psychology and experience also. That means the mannerism of the life, the culture of the life, and the psychological thinking in what manner or what way people think, and the experience gained through their life have been deeply narrated or sketched in the Canterbury Tales, questioning the complexity of the human condition. And those things mainly question the complexity of the human condition, the conditions which made complex the human life. That's why he questioned those things. Then, and always seeing both the humor and tragedy in it. And the dual thing of his writing was that Geoffrey Chaucer wanted to show in a different manner. That's why he exhibited both humor and tragedy. Both humor. That's why he exhibited both humor and tragedy in his writing. This is the essence of the Canterbury Tales, and there is none I think would be the essence of Canterbury Tales. The content. What are the content of the Canterbury Tales? We have to discuss a poem, a group of 30 pilgrims, which concludes the poet himself. Actually, the pilgrims are 31 because 29 pilgrims are there, and one is the host, another is the partner. And if we combine 2 with the 29, we will come across 31 pilgrims. Oh, okay, it will be very sufficient. In the poem, a group of 30 pilgrims, which concludes the poem, his poet himself gather at the Tabarin in the southwark. Tabarin is a place of pilgrimage, where pilgrims in every year come across or come to, because they have a very glimpse of the speculation of that place. That's why he may be very satisfied, and according to the hope and the anticipation prescribed in the Bible, they will be given salvation, and they will be forwarded to the way of the heaven and across the Thames of the London. And Thames is a very beautiful and famous river in London, and the Tabarin will be seen across the Thames of the London, agrees to engage in the story, and this poem has been agreed to engage in storytelling context. And this poem we can see that there is a context, there is a competition among the pilgrims about the telling story of different kinds, and in which mode and which way in different modes they will give their direction to their stories, to their poems, to the narratives, to describe in very flamboyant manner. That's why the travel on the horseback to the shrine of the Thomas A. Becket in the Canterbury Tales back. Thomas A. Becket, there is a very history about Thomas A. Becket, because Thomas A. Becket, I think, is not a non or any other of religious ecclesiastical institutions savior or savior. I think he is the soldier who, as a mercenary, fought against the Duke of Normandy, but he was mated. He was died and mated here. That's why a tomb was made and an epitaph was made on his tomb, and he became the theme of worship. He became the thing of worship by the many pilgrims. Harryville, the host of Tavern. Harryville was the host of the tavern, serves as the master of ceremonies for the content. Whoever he judges to be the best storyteller will receive a meal at his tavern courtesy of other pilgrims. We have to remember these points. Here was the another character, Harryville, who was the host of the tavern, who serves as a master of ceremonies as the contest. Here the Harryville was regarded as the master of ceremonies for the context. Whoever he judges to be the best storyteller who will receive a meal at this tower contest of the pilgrims. The character described in the Canterbury Tales both are individual as the stock characters. They are the representative of the social classes. The medieval society, and he has also a very close look towards the medieval society, especially how he influenced the medieval society social theory divided society into three broad classes called the estates. You have to remember that medieval social theory divided society into three broad classes. That means society has been divided into three broad classes called the estates during the medieval society social theory. The military first, first social theory called about the military, which included the nobility, since it traditionally derived its title and a privilege from the military serfs and duties. Second one is the clergy, which again at the times overlapped with the noble classes, since the system of a primogenitive favored the eldest male heir. The laity of 90 to 95% population, which ranged from the landowner and professionals to the laborer and the peasants. You have to remember those things. Then we have to discuss about the choice of the pilgrimage. So what is that we have to think about? It is a picture of a chaucer. You think that he was horse ridden and the pilgrimage. I think he was going for pilgrimage. He was on the pilgrimage. That's why this picture has been shown in this background. Why pilgrimage? The use of a pilgrimage as farming device for the collection of stories enabled the chaucer, because pilgrims are there with the emphasis and with the help of them, Chaucer can derive almost a number of stories. That's why he may configure his poetry in a very peculiar manner to bring people together, people from many walks of life. That's why he want to make people exhibit. He want to make people conscious about many walks of life, the many sides of life and many manners of life. That's why they may be further developed. To present a high varied collection of literary genres, they have to present a high varied collection of literary genres, because through his writing, through his association and company with the pilgrims, he can have to present a highly varied collection of literary genres: courtly performance, saint's life, allegorical tale, beast fable, and medieval sermon, and alchemical accounts they have to discuss. And he can extend, here the point refers to that, to make extend the consideration of the relationship between pleasure and vices of this world and the spiritual aspiration of the next. That's why the poet, the Chaucer, can extend or may have extended the consideration of relationship between pleasure and the vices of the world. Here, he wants to draw the very close connection between pleasure and the vices. If a man seeks pleasure by not forsaking his personal themes and by damaging others, then what we call the vice will be injected in them. That's why there is a very close link between pleasure and vice. Moreover, Pilgrim to the Canterbury Tales made the work very English. So the English that developed in the English literature from the beginning, especially in the era of the Chaucer, the age of the Chaucer, it made the English a really English language, because it developed a lot during this period, and the age of Chaucer contributed a lot to the development of Canterbury Tales. From the tradition, the Canterbury Tales present similar and with Italian literature. Actually, the Canterbury Tales represents the similar with Italian literature. It draws on the technique of the poem tale as practiced by the G. Boccaccio and the Decameron, through which we are not sure if Chaucer knew this work. It's entirely understood. The pretext for storytelling in the Boccaccio is a plague in the Florence, which sends a group of 10 nobles of the country to the escape of the Black Death. During the time, there is also a Black Death because it was the Black Death which was spread through the nook and corner of the England. Though some of the peoples have escaped from it, and but still they could see the very horrible experience, the horrible scenery of the England that created due to the Black Death or on account of the Black Death. During the following 10 days, each of them tells a tale around the topic chosen by the king or the queen of the day. At the end of the book, the 100 tales are completed and the plague ends and the nobles return to the Florence. At the end of the book, there is the ending of the plague and the nobles return to the forest. The nobles who have escaped slightly or by chance from the plague or from the horrible net or the descendants of the plague, they return to the Florence. To innovation. What to innovate? To innovation means what to innovate. In Canterbury Tales, we have to innovate a number of things. The Canterbury Tales innovates on this model in the significant ways that we have to discuss on speculating the following in the following given points. Far from the being novel, Chaucer's tales run the spectrum of the middle class. The tales are not told in the order that might be expected, from the highest ranking pilgrim to the lowest. Each character uses his tale as a weapon or tool to get back or to give even with the previous tale-teller. Moreover, Chaucer presides over the whole expense of his narrative as a poet but also as a pilgrimage. The themes, language and style. We have to discuss about the themes, language and style of the Chaucer. It is intrigued by the human nature and frailty. Chaucer was an acute observer of our daily life at many levels, therefore, his themes vary from religious to the magic, from love to the marriage, from stories about the people as well as stories about animals, many of which carry a moral language. So, the human nature and the frailty. Frailty means the weakness, frailty means the fragile human nature represented or embodied in the Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales or any other writing has been intrigued by the human nature because it was the human nature himself whose characters consist intrigue or plot or the secret plan of damaging others. It also impacted majorly or mainly on the human beings to damage them. Chaucer was an acute observer of a daily life at many levels. That's why Chaucer was an acute observer of a daily life at many levels. Therefore, his themes vary from religion to the magic. That's why his theme vary from religion to magic, from love to marriage. Though stories about the people who are stories about the animals, many of which carries about the moral message. So, his last of all, we can say that as a very specific point, the stories and the moral themes of the moral aims of his writing was to give or propagate moral message to the people living in England, which is in the basis a universal message to all the people of mankind. Correct? He was the first writer to prompt the Middle English as a literary language. Actually, Dr. Chaucer had contributed a lot, and in this context, we can say that what we call Middle English as a literary language because Geoffrey Chaucer made English as Middle English as a literary language because he found it a stone and left it a marble. We can call also say in this context in the place of French or the Latin, he used an innovative verse form and heroic couplet. You know the heroic couplet. Heroic couplets are the rhyming pattern of iambic pentameter. They are called the heroic because in the sense that they describe the adventure, heroism, and the chivalrous nature of the stories or the wars invasion by the Greeks. His style is lively and witty. His style is very lively and witty, humorous and vibrant, well and highly poetic and delightful and entertaining. Actually, his style is very lively and witty, humorous and vibrant, as well as highly poetic and delightfully entertaining. The general prologue. So we have to recite this poem and we have to understand it very smoothly because those rhyming lines and the verses are very pleasant to hear and to appreciate in the same manner. So we are going to discuss those things. So let us start the general prologue. And briefly, when the sun had gone to the rest, I had spoken to them all upon the cliff. It was soon one with them in the worship and flesh to rise and to make the way to Canterbury as you had me say. First, you have to notice those lines because how, in what manner the lines and the verses have been configured, then you will discuss. I started from the beginning for your general understanding that how you grasp and understand the poem. So let me start the poem. When in the April the sweet sowers fall, and pierce the drought of March to the root and all. The veins are washed in the liquid of such power as brings about the engineering of the flower. It was during the April season, the season of the April, the sweet sower small, the sweet sower fall. The sower or the drizzle or the raining has been called or regarded as the sweet because it was during the Black Deaths because the Black Death was there due to the drought. That's why the people abhorred or hate the drought. So they wanted soil to be fallen more and more. That's why they can be happy and satisfied. That's why you can see that there is the rhyming words fall and all. So when you recite, when in the April the sweet soils fall and pierce the drought of March to the root and all. So when the season of April, the sweets were fall and pierce the drought march to the roots. In the month of March, there seems or appear to be heavy drought in the land. That's why people are suffering from starvation and they are hungry, they are famished. That's why they suffer a lot. So they wanted and hoped for the soil, the rain. That's why they can be happy and satisfied and all the veins are bathed in liquid of such power and all the veins are bathed in the liquid of such power and brings about the engendering of the flower and you can see the two rhyming words the power and the flower. The veins are bathed in the liquid of such power. Those things, those who are about to die, those things who are dying, those things, those who have already dampened and dried almost, they have been bathed in the liquid of such power. Liquid means in the bliss of rain that has fallen from the heaven on this dry ground to make it alive and fresh and the power of such a liquid has that it brings about the engendering of the flower. Engendering means the revival of the life, the returning to the life and back to the life or the phrase of the life to the flower. That means flowers are going to blossom, the flowers are seeming to be blossoming or blooming on the dirt ground where in the month of March it has been dried, and in the month of April it has been lively and fresh, so as to make the flowers bloom. You have to understand from these lines. So you understood the first line, then we comes to the second stanza. When Zephyrus with his sweet breath exhales an air in every grove and hits upon the tender shoots, and the young sun, his half course in the sign of the Ram has run, and the small fowl are making melody that sleep away the night with an open eye. So you have to see this stanza also. When the Zephyrus with his sweet breath exhales an air in every grove and health. Here is the mythological character Zephyrus because at the time science was not so developed. They thought that Zephyrus with his sweet breath was exhaling an air in every grove and health because there is a grove filled with the oxygen as well as some trees, the green leaves, and the heat. The Zephyrus exhale the air from those places upon the tender shoots. That's why the young sun in the during the half course in the sign of Ram. Ram is the sign of what we call in the astrology, it is the very indication of a charming picture of life. That's Ram has been indicated, and the Ram has drawn, and the small fowl are making the melody. Fowl means F-O-W-L, fowl. Fowl means the small fowl means the small creatures who are there. They are making their melody that sleep away the night with an open eye. Here, the fowls are making their melody because they are very happy. That's why they are singing, they are chanting, they are hymning, and they sleep away with night and open eye. So they are very aged and they are very happy. So the nature picks them and their heart engages. The nature pricks them. The nature fills them with charming, fills them with satisfaction, and their heart engages on those things. Then people long to go on pilgrimage, and palmers long to seek the stranger strands of the far sands, hallowed in the sundry lands, and especially from every side sand of England down to the Canterbury they went to seek the holy blissful martyr quick to give this help to him that they were sick. So we have to discuss this whole stanza. The people long way to go on pilgrimage. The people are happy because the drought has been flooded, the drought has been vanished, and the people started to go on pilgrimage. And the palmers long to seek the strange stand of far sands hallowed in the sundry lands. Here the palmer means the palm trees. The palm trees were very eager to seek that the strangers coming on this way they should stand under its branches in its shade because they may find satisfaction there because the season has almost changed. The season has given rise to the rain and the drought has been faded away. The saints have been happy. The world is very happy and wonderful. That's why the poet may seek uh, or the poet may say that those palm trees want that the stranger to stand under its shade, under its shady branches. And especially you want to emphasize on the sides. Sides means at the time the position given or conferred upon the high ecclesiastical society, ecclesiastical institutions and the people of England down to the Canterbury they went. The pilgrims of England went down to the Canterbury and to seek the holy blissful martyr. The Thomas A. Becket, whose shrine was worshipped there, they wanted to get a very uh, blissful grace from the martyr and quick to give his help to whom they were sick. And by getting that uh, by getting that power of grace, they can heal easily the sick persons. The summary. What is the summary of this prologue? The general prologue opens with the description of the return of the spring held by the April season and the blossoming of the flowers and the leaves that chirping birds. This is the very conception I just described. The general prologue. The prologue generally opens with or unfolds with the description that describes the return of the spring. Here, the return of the spring means the return of the life, the return to the life, the back to the life which is almost moribund and dying, that has been fresh and alive and revivals in the during the April rains. Because in the month of March, it has been almost dried and dampened. That's why he want to say that in during the time of April, the poet describes the blossoming of the flowers and the leaves. Around the time of the year, people begin to feel the desire to go on a pilgrimage. May devout English pilgrims set up to visit shrines in the distant Holy Land, but even more choose to travel Canterbury to visit the relics of the St. Thomas Becket inside the cathedral, where they thank the martyr for having helped them in where they need. You have to understand this thing. General prologue. It happened in the season that one day in Southwark, as Tabard as I lay ready to go on a pilgrim and start for Canterbury, most devout at heart, at night there came in the hostelry some 920 company of sundry folk, happening them to fall in fellowship. They were pilgrims all, that towards Canterbury meant to ride. The rooms and stables of the inn were wide, they made us easy, all was of the best. So the general product describes that during that season one day a number of pilgrims arrived. There are 20 and 9 in number, that means almost they were 29. And they in the southwark, they reached in the southwark at the Tabarin, where the the host of Tabarin, Harry will lay, who was ready to go, who was about to go on pilgrimage and start for Canterbury, who was almost departed at the hut. At night there came the hostess of 9 and 20 in company. That means the horrible encounter made with the 29 pilgrims, who along with the horrible were about to go ready for the pilgrims. Okay. General prologue. And briefly, when the sun has gone to the rest, when the sun was about to set, I had spoken to them all upon the trip. I started speaking to those people. I started speaking to those people or the pilgrims who were on the trip, that uh, but soon one with them in the fellowship, placed to rise yearly to take the way to Canterbury, as you heard me say. Nonetheless, while I have time and space before my story takes a further space, it seems a reasonable thing to say what their condition was the foliary of each them as it appears to me. And nonetheless, though it was not the less, while I have time and space, here the horrible want to speak that while he has the time and space, he said that he has to take the Canterbury, he has to take them Canterbury in a further space. It seems reasonable. It was almost reasonable that it was not easy for them to reach Canterbury in a very little time, because it will take a long time. That's why they may be fully aware of each of them. It happened to me. According to the profession and a degree, what appeal the riding in at the night, I therefore begin. So you have to see those things. We have to study the summary. The narrator tells that as he appeared to go on such a pilgrimage, saying at the Tabar in the southward, the Tabarin, a company of 29 travelers entered. The travelers were a diverse group who, like the narrator, were on their way to the Canterbury. They happily agreed to let him to join. That night, the group slept at the Tabarin and woke up early in the next morning to set off their journey. Before continuing the tale, the narrator declares his intent to list the describe each of the members on the group and states that you will start from the night. So it is the entire thing I just elaborately discussed, and is a summary given here. You have to look on these things and remember those things for your exam, which are important for your exams, that you can describe as points in your question paper. Analysis. The opening invocation of the spring is lengthy and formal compared to the language and the rest of the prologue. The first line situates in the story in a particular time and place, but it does so in cosmic and cyclical term, giving the lines a dreamy and timeless focused quality. In line 20, a narrator abandons all his knowing point of view, identifying himself as an actual person I, then shifting into the first person plural, referring to the pilgrims as we, thus asserting his status as a member of the group. His comments 1, while I have time and space, underscores the fact that he is writing some time after the events of the story, that he is describing the characters from the memory. As a result, the description will be, according with respect to the subject to his memory, shaped by the personal perception and opinions. That means the description will be in favor of a subject that has already been engrossed and trashed in his memory, and those things were shaped. Those things have been given shape by their personal perception and opinions. This is the point the description will be in accordance with. Nevertheless, the declaration that he will tell us about his contradiction, the airy or dress, the degree suggests that the portraits will be based on the objective facts, as we see in the description of the wife of the baths. So, the declaration about the pilgrims, how they dressed, how their condition was, and what kind of degree they attained as an educated person, this all things will be described or portrayed. That will be based on the objective facts, the fact of objectives, and we can see those things in the wife of the bath. So let us proceed towards the next, the wife of the bath. So we should pause for a minute because I think you all have been tired and boredom. So we should take a little rest here.